we play a game?
Why, yes, I believe we shall.
Oh, I got a live one here.
Welcome, live from Little Rock. It's Shane Plays Radio, Geek Talk Radio. So glad to have you here. It's a great time to be a geek, and this is a journey into the things we love. Whether you're listening on the air at 96.5 FM The Answer out of Little Rock, or if you're listening on 96.5 FMTheAnswer.com, or on the iHeartRadio or TuneIn Radio apps, I'm glad you're here. About to get our guest, Chris Avellone, is already on the phone. I'm going to do a couple little house cleaning notes here, and then we'll get right to him. He has graciously agreed to give us about 45 minutes of his time, and I'm really looking forward to it. So first, if anybody wants to call in during the show, whether you're local or not, it's fine. You can call it 501-823-0965. That's 501-823-0965. And you can tweet me at Shane Plays. That's Shane, like the name Shane, and then plays like I like to play things. So Shane Plays, at Shane Plays. You can either call or tweet. I'll do my best to get to your questions or comments on either of those formats. Remember, this show does have sponsors. Very blessed and happy to have those sponsors. However, if you wanted to support the show yourself individually, you can do so using Patreon. And that's patreon.com. That's patreon.com/Shane Plays. And you could pledge as little as $1 per show and help us keep the show on the air. So I'm not guilting you. You can listen as much as you want and never pledge, and that's fine. But if you want to support the show, you can. Remember, the show goes out as a podcast after the live show. And that's posted to my blog at shaneplays.com. It's on iTunes and we're on Stitcher now. And also last, before we get to Chris Avellone, you can go to shaneplays.com right now. That's shaneplays.com. And there's a post there. The very top post on the blog is a post with notes and links and that we're going to be talking about today. So with no further ado, I want to introduce Chris Avellone. I imagine a lot of the people who are listening to the show already know who he is. But if you don't, he is a very well-known game designer. He's also a writer, as in an author. He's written at least one short story that I'm aware of that I've read, and also comic books. And he's also an illustrator. So he's a well-rounded Renaissance man of the new millennium. Chris Avellone, welcome to the show.
Hey, Shane. Thank you for having me. And Thanks to anyone tuning in. I really appreciate you guys taking the time. But and that was a very kind introduction. I feel a little bit embarrassed and very flattered. So thank you.
Well, you are, there within the circle of game developers, especially role-playing games, computer role-playing games. You're extremely well known. So, and there's a lot of people. I posted on Reddit and the RPGcodex.com that I was going to be interviewing you, and there was a lot of activity. So, and people...
that is certainly true. I noticed there were a lot of questions. One thing I wanted to say is, if we don't get to all those questions, it is absolutely my pleasure to drop by those forums and answer any one that I don't get a chance to answer their questions, because I would feel bad to leave those lingering. And, those guys took time to put that stuff up there. But,
exactly.
There was certainly a lot of activity.
Yeah, there was, and I mentioned too, I was like, I'd love to get to all these, but it would have to be like a 3 or 4 hour show. So, and, and as I love to say, I make a point of mentioning it at least once per show. Time is a predator that stalks us all our lives. So, yeah. So, I'm going to name some of the games you've been involved with. And then I want to talk about your writing and illustration. And then I want to come back to your games, and we'll make the rest of your time about the games.
Right. That's like full circle.
Yeah, we'll bring it like a good story should. So, okay, here's actually, I didn't realize this. I've played several of your games and loved them. I didn't realize that you were involved with Star Trek Starfleet Academy until I started.
I was.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that does go way back.
I loved that game. I really enjoyed that game.
That took up was a good chunk of the action division at Interplay Entertainment a long time ago, and they were drafting scenario designers to sort of throw out mission designs for the game. So I threw out like 3 or 4, and I think they threw out 2 of those because they were terrible, and justifiably so. But being able to actually briefly write for Star Trek was a huge surprise because I was a huge Star Trek nerd back in the day, even though
Sure.
I'm not quite the same Star Trek nerd that I used to be.
Well, I'll tell you, I really enjoyed that game. You know, I look back on it fondly. There was one, I don't know if you were involved with this mission or scenario or not. There was one scenario where you had to like warp in, and the point was not to defeat all the enemies. You had to survive long enough to beam like some people off of a starbase and then warp back out. And that one just really stands out to me. I don't, you know, I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. I don't know if you had anything to do with that scenario. Or not.
It depends on which ships you were fighting. If it was a variety of different ships all trying to storm the station, it possibly was one of my scenarios. But if it was one particular enemy in the Star Trek universe, I wasn't involved in that scenario.
Okay, I honestly can't remember. It's been coming up on 20 years, so 18.
You know, Shane, I'll tell you, like, I'm surprised you remember that game, but usually the one Star Trek game from Interplay that people usually ask about is Secret of Vulcan Fury. Because
Yeah.
it's an adventure game, and like everyone wants to know what the hell happened with that because it just looks so cool.
I was just thinking about that game last night, Chris, and I remember just like having like I just a epiphany moment of life watching the trailer for that. But I actually I think I got the backstory on that. If you want to give the backstory here, you're more than welcome to. But you know, I guess a lot of what we saw was promotional materials, but there wasn't actually a lot of the development on the game itself. Was that correct?
I believe that there was a great deal of iteration. The trailer was actually probably the most solid part of the game because it was just going through a lot of design changes. And I don't want to misspeak because I wasn't actually involved with the development team for that. I was just excited about the potential for it coming out because that trailer really got me fired up and I got pretty excited.
Oh man, I was so excited for that. And then you know, I've read a lot of, you know, people like what happened. And then I've heard kind of the backstory that was like, you know, we came up with all these great materials to convince people to, hey, we should make this game, but it just never went through to fruition. But yeah, it looked amazing. So my geek side says, I wish somebody would make it today, but you know.
Yeah, Interplay had a really good run with the Star Trek games, in my opinion. They did a lot of good adventure games. Starfleet Academy, I thought was pretty good. Klingon Academy, I got to observe the process for that. I still think that was a solid game, even though it probably could have been even more fun, I think, if some of the design ideas had been carried fully through and supported. But, man, I thought that Interplay did a pretty good job with the Star Trek franchise. So, yeah.
I agree.
Secret of Vulcan Fury shall remain a secret, I suppose.
Yeah, it is a secret to somebody's grave, and it makes people furious. Sorry. So, all right. So let me throw out some of the other games you've worked on. Like I said, then we'll talk about your writing and illustration, and then we'll bring it back to so the people who are like, I want to hear about the games, we will talk about the games. You know, of course, Star Trek, Starfleet Academy, Fallout 2, Descent to Undermountain, a big one, huge jewel in your crown, if I may use that phrase, Planescape Torment. That just, you know, amazing game. Icewind Dale, Icewind Dale 2, Van Buren, the infamous Van Buren, which would have been Fallout 3, which people still talk about.
Buren.
Yeah, people.
so many years went into that.
Yeah, people still talk about it. Star Wars: Knights of the Old Republic 2, The Sith Lords, which I actually have a news item that we will go into here in a little while. Neverwinter Nights 2. Huh? Yeah, Neverwinter Nights 2. Yeah, there's some exciting news, which I'm sure you're aware of with KOTOR 2. Okay, Alpha Protocol. I have to admit, I'm not familiar with Alpha Protocol, but a user on RPG Codex, Hivemind, informed me that he was going to kill me for leaving that out of a list of games I was talking about. So.
Well, Shane, we can't let you die. So I'm glad you added that. Yeah, it's not it's not as well known as some of the other titles, but Alpha Protocol was an interesting experience. It was really fun to work on, and I'm proud of it. It was the first time I had to do like a real world espionage, you know, Kiefer Sutherland 24 style tension game, and it was actually a great. I loved it. I had a good time with it.
Well, great. Yeah, I've got to go check it out because it sounds like one of those games that the people who got it are passionate about it. So But yeah, I usually like, I will kill you. So on RPG Codex, I said, mea culpa. So I hope that I survive the day.
Well, Shane, I will say that if you do decide to play it, one of the unfortunate aspects of it is it takes a little takes a little while to ramp up.
Okay.
And so the opening is a little slow, and that's kind of my fault in terms of scope and pacing. So just bear with it, and only if you have time. Like, the opening can be a killer. So if you're like, well, I don't really feel like going on, I would not blame you.
No, I think, I'm the type of gamer, if I'm hearing a game is good, I'm probably going to give it to what I think is at least a third or maybe even halfway through before I decide. It's like a good movie or a good book. You can't, sometimes it really halfway point is where it takes off. So, and you needed all that other stuff to get there. So that's just my opinion. Let's see. Fallout New Vegas, of course. Wasteland 2. This surprised me. Not that I don't think that you can work on different varieties of games, but it's such a different type of game than the normal ones you work on, which is FTL Advanced Edition. I was like, oh, okay. Which FTL is a cool game, boy. Speaking that game is hard at the end, but it's a fun game.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
If you don't have transporters to go over that that monster ship, you are so screwed. Like the first time I hit it, obviously it demolished me. But yeah, I'm a huge FTL fan, and I was actually ran across one of the designers by accident. And he mentioned, hey, I'm working on this game FTL. I actually have to, leave here in a little bit and go work on it. I'm like, you work on FTL?
You do FTL.
I kind of freaked out a little bit. I'm like, oh, man, I would write for that game for free. And he's like, well, I guess I could raise that with the team. And then they dropped me a line like 2 or 3 weeks later, and they're like, so if you're serious? And I'm like, yes, I spent a few weekends just writing encounters for that, for like the new race in that game, and I had a blast. I love FTL, and I would do more games like that because I wasted so many hours. Not wasted.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, you invested.
Oh my God.
You invested hours.
Invested, exactly.
So that's what people forget. You're a game developer, but you also love games, so you can geek out on games just like we can. So it's like, it's not like it's like, oh, I don't get excited about games anymore. You run into this dev from FTL and you're like, dude. So I love that you're still excited and passionate about games in general.
Yeah, so, usually I only have the opportunity to work on role playing games, and getting a chance to do FTL, I saw a lot of the mechanics for RPG, conversations could be transferred over to some of their encounters, and then I got super excited. So it was like using the same RPG skills, but because the context and the mechanics had changed, suddenly there was a new injection of life into it that got me really excited. So that was kind of a blast.
Cool. I played the original FTL. I haven't played this one, but I want to check it out. Okay, and then wrapping up, I know you've worked on more stuff than this, but just kind of the highlights. Of course, there was Pillars of Eternity that recently released, and then I'm so excited about this game. One, because I think Numenera is a great system, but two, because we're getting another Torment game, and everything I'm seeing about it is just making me go. So, Torment: Tides of Numenera looks so cool, and if people don't know, Numenera is a tabletop role-playing game from Monty Cook Games that is a new system that's very elegant, very cool, and they're adapting it to tell another. It's not Torment Planescape, but it's another Torment game. So that we could almost have an entire show about Numenera. Right.
It's like the listeners aren't familiar. Numenera basically takes the concept of what if technology had escalated to such an extent that it was indistinguishable from magic, and then they put you in this world that's actually the wreckage of 9 other worlds,
right?
With all this technology littered around, and people can sort of be archetypal, warriors, mages, whatever. But the context is different. You might do things with nanites or radio signals, or you might have a pyrokinetic devices embedded in your arm, all this crazy stuff, and then. That's only one aspect, because we actually played Numenera quite a bit, and one thing I love about it is it actually encourages all the players to make role-playing connections between each other, and then they actually give you additional rewards during the game for cooperating with each other, which totally changed the dynamic from players just solely being selfish and holding back, or I want the highest loot item, to, oh, there's a huge benefit, to cooperate and help with each other. And it's made for some of the best sessions of role playing I think I've ever played.
Well, I mean, I got the PDFs from, I think, RPG Drive-Thru. I haven't, and I've read through them, and I love the system. I haven't had a chance to play it yet. There's a guy on Twitch named Tabletopping that is going to start doing some Numenera, and I'm hoping to get involved with him.
Good. But
having said that, if you ever want to come back on the show and talk about Numenera, or if you want to, I don't know how well you're, like, if you work directly with Monty Cook Games or whatever, you guys would be more than welcome. I'll give you a whole show to talk about Numenera. So I think it's a great system.
Shane, I would actually really love to do that. So that's an option for the future. Yeah, please just drop me a line. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, so we're going to get back to games, but first, and I want to do this specifically because I know a lot of people, they get known for one thing. And even though they love that thing, there's other things they love to do too. And all anybody ever wants to talk to them about is the first thing. So I want to talk to you about your writing, which, and of course,
sure,
a huge part of your game development is your narrative and your writing. But you're actually, I mean, you've wrote comic books, and in the most recent the most recent issue of the Dragon Plus app from Wizards of the Coast, you've got a short story in there called The Winter King.
Yes.
And I thought it was great.
Oh, well, thank you. You know what? I actually wrote that about 10 years ago.
Yeah, they said you wrote it while you were working on Icewind Dale.
Yeah. You know what? I wanted to give some backstory to one of the major NPCs you find in Heart of Winter.
Yep.
And I wrote this short story. It never got published. I felt a little bit bad about it. And then recently I was going back through a lot of the short story work I'd had lying in my archives because I kind of missed doing that stuff. And I found it. And then I'm like, wow, like whatever happened with this? And then so I was chatting with Trent Oster, who is like the CEO of Beamdog, and they're doing Siege of Dragonspear, and they did like the Icewind Dale Enhanced Edition. And I'm like, hey, Trent, I have this short story. Like, if you guys ever just want it, like, otherwise I'm never going to do anything with it. And he's like, yep. And then it was a pretty quick thing to get it out there. And I'm really glad it finally saw the light of day because otherwise it would have just been dusted with cobwebs on my computer.
Well, I thought it was good. I mean, you could, I think that had you gone that direction, you would probably be pretty well known just for writing short stories or whatever. It was it was done very well. I won't give away. Well, you're welcome. I won't give away what happens, but I will say that there is like a master weaponsmith, I guess, who decides to go build his masterwork weapon or his masterwork item, and it's what entails when he runs into a very nasty creature that you called the Winter King. So that is very cool. Now, I did have a question for you. I wanted to tie this into what you wrote and then into like how D&D works, if you will. Okay,
sure.
Because Icewind Dale was made on from D&D. In the story, you said that a lot of master forgers, right, armor smiths, weaponsmiths, whatever. I guess dwarven ones will feel a call, and it's like they cannot live. They cannot have peace until they follow this call and make this weapon. Do you see that that's how it kind of happens in D&D, that with these masterwork items, or was that just kind of for fun for that one story?
Shane, to be honest, my Forgotten Realms research has kind of faded over the years.
Okay.
It may have been spurred by something I read about the Dwarven Pantheon, but the idea that a dwarf would feel that creative calling, kind of like grabbed me a little bit, and then I was like, well, that would kind of make kind of a cool story, especially if he's not fashioning something that's made out of traditional materials, and he's actually fashioning it from, the ice of this, supposedly cursed glacier, and then that sets the context for when you encounter him in the game as to why he's there. I just thought that'd be a really cool aspect to explore, especially since you can get such a variety of weapons forged from that ice in Heart of Winter that I was like, you know what? I'm just excited about writing about this. I'm going to go ahead and do it.
It was very cool. I recommend people go check it out. I mean, you can read it for free. So, and from the Dragon Plus app. So, I recommend people go check that out. So, like, as far as like prose, because I know you write all the time, but I'm talking by prose, I mean, short fiction, long fiction, novels. Do you want to do more of that? Is that something that's in you, or is you just do it every now and then for fun?
Well, when I went back through my archives, I noticed that I have been doing a lot of short story writing. I actually did a short story for two short stories that went to two different anthologies over the past year. One was a video game anthology by John Joseph Miller, who set up it's called like Press Start to Play, and it's a whole collection of like video game short stories. So that kind of appealed to me from a geeky standpoint. I'm like, oh, I'll give this a shot. And then he also asked if I'd be interested in doing, I believe it's called The End Has Come anthology. It's sort of like the ending of a trilogy of post-apocalyptic anthologies where, hey, here's what happens after an apocalypse, and here's the world that results from it. And that also kind of spoke to me. So I put a short story in both of those anthologies.
Nice.
And I really enjoy doing short stories. I think short stories sort of help you get to the point faster.
Mm-hmm.
One struggle I've had with prose is that I'm so used to writing branching narratives that
right.
sometimes it's hard to choose the one path that I think is strongest, because you're usually trained to make all the branches interesting. So that's been a little bit of a struggle. I've tried writing longer works. I wrote everything except the last 6 chapters of the Wasteland 2 novel.
Okay.
And I was like, wow, I have a new respect for authors that write novels, because this is a lot of tracking and work. And I made a lot of rookie mistakes, like too many protagonists. And I'm like, I eventually had to sit down with one of the other Wasteland writers, Nathan Long, and he walked me through. He's like, okay, Chris, you've got good stuff in here, but please understand that there's probably some basics that we should probably go over with novel writing. And then he walked me through sort of a course syllabus that he had taught. And at the end of it, I'm like, wow, Nathan, that makes a lot of sense. And he's like, no problem. I'm here to help you. You've got good stuff in here, but now let's figure out how this should be divided into short stories. What stuff should be precursor and prologue stuff, and here's what should be the main spine. But here's the stuff that I thought worked really well for the main spine, and here's the rest of the stuff that I think would work better as supporting short story material. And I really appreciate Nathan for helping me with that, because most of the creative writing courses in college focus just on short story stuff.
Yeah. Well, most successful creative people rarely exist in a vacuum. So very glad that you had that resource to turn to. So real quick, I want to talk about your illustrations and comic book writing, and then we'll take a break and come back and talk about your video game, which is just so much stuff to go into. But I see I see you do your doodles, which are not doodles. That sound your illustrations.
I think doodles is an absolutely fine way to do it.
Okay. All right. Well, some people think of doodles as kind of like looking down at, anyway. So I see your doodles all the time. They're very cool. I think people have told me that you wanted to get into cartooning. I don't know if that's just anecdotal, or if that's true. You've done some comic book writing. So what's kind of your what you're wanting to do there?
Well, the doodles that I do is mostly stick figures, and to give us a little bit of background for that, I always wanted to draw and write for comics, and so one of the books that I picked up in an effort to learn about that was there's a book called How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way.
I remember that book.
Yeah, so it's a great book. One of the principles they teach artists in that book is it's easier at points to draw a stick figure showcasing what the action of each character is, and then add muscles to it. And I sort of never got to the muscle stage. I just ended up drawing a whole bunch of stick figures again and
right.
again. And my parents were very cool about it. Actually, what they would do is my dad would bring home these huge rolls of paper from work that they would otherwise throw away, and then I would just roll them out in the basement and then just draw continuously on these rolls of paper. And I just never got past stick figures. But I think focusing on that sort of allowed me to, sort of find new ways to communicate just with stick figures. And I really enjoy doing it. And sometimes it's far more personal than actually, sending someone a message. Sometimes if you just draw them a cartoon about how you're feeling or how you wish them well or happy birthday. Sometimes that works a lot better than just a brief text message.
Well, right, yeah, because you're investing, you're showing some personality in it. I personally like to send people silly haikus, but that's just me. So
we actually had a silly haiku contest on Gamers Tavern, and people sent in these Fallout haikus.
Yeah,
and they were all great.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to do a cartoon for all of you because these are fantastic.
Yeah, so it's like dog meat wags his tail. People explode everywhere. I survive too. I know that's not the right syllables, but all right. So do you have any comic book writing coming up, or are you still, because I know a few years back you had several comic book pieces published.
I'm going to be doing 2 graphic novels for Numenera, and in tandem with the game. It's going to focus on the companion that I'm writing for that, and beyond that, I've actually spoken potentially to Dark Horse about how to approach them about projects. I have a pretty good working relationship with one of the editors there, Dave Marshall, who does a lot of the video game titles and also does explores new IPs and new franchises. And the opportunity to work with Dark Horse again would be great, because I had a great experience with them on Fallout. I had a great experience with the Star Wars comics, and it was all just really fun to do. And I think there's a lot to learn from writing a graphic novel from a game designer's standpoint that I think allows you to sort of take a step back from the story and just look for more ways to incorporate visuals into what's going on rather than sort of word dumps.
Sure. Okay. Well, so people keep an eye on that. There is more to Chris Avellone than just the games, but we're glad the games are there, and we're going to talk about that next. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to dive into the rushing river that is Chris Avellone's game design history and what he has going on now on Shane Plays Radio.
Privately owned and licensed by the Arkansas State Police, Rock City Alarm Company has been in business since 1996, specializing in sales, installation, servicing, and monitoring of burglar alarms and fire alarms for the state of Arkansas. Rock City Alarm provides service for residential and commercial alarms, and now provides cellular monitoring with remote arm and disarm. Just call John Hardiman at 501-541-8747. That's John Hardiman at 501-541-8747.
Call Chapman Service today for all your air conditioning and electrical concerns. 0% financing till January 2020 for a limited time. Voted best of the best for 5 years in a row. It's hard to stop a train. Chapman Service, all you want in an air conditioning and an electrical company, nothing you don't.
Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/ShanePlays. In business for over 15 years, the Hillcrest Doghouse provides full grooming, bathing, boarding, and daycare services for just about all breeds with knowledgeable and friendly staff, including a licensed groomer with over 10 years experience. The Hillcrest Doghouse uses all natural shampoos, including a pesticide-free flea shampoo. All kennels are situated where we work, which means your companion is rarely left alone, providing the benefit of full interaction with our friendly staff. Additionally, we walk your dog at least 3 times a day to ensure a happy day. Grooming and boarding packages are also available at great prices. The Hillcrest Doghouse is located at 3924 West Markham Street in Little Rock. Call the Hillcrest Doghouse at 501-296-9800. That's 501-296-9800. We're also on Facebook. Find us and like us.
And we're back. Shane Plays Radio with Chris Avellone. Very, very, very well-known game designer, game writer, and then a writer and illustrator in his own right. So I have to ask you real quick. We're going to get into your video games, but I have to ask you real quick, Chris. Have you ever, how when people go to the gym and they work out and they flex and they kind of check their muscles out? Have you ever done that and called them the Guns of Avellone? Have you ever done that?
I have not done that. Except as a joke. And then my girlfriend rolls her eyes and she's like, really?
As she should.
You just gained 5 vanity points. Like, really?
The gun.
I'm like, honey, I mean, just study the guns.
The Guns of Avellone, the classic movie. So, okay, anyway, but more into serious stuff. Okay, so here's what a lot of people really want to know about. They want to know about Baldur's Gate, Sage of Dragonspear, which is from Beamdog, which is I'm calling it an interquel. It's not a prequel. It's not a sequel. It's an interquel between Baldur's Gate 1 and 2.
Yeah, the Beamdog, okay, so again, Trent Oster, who I've known for a while, he dropped me a line along with the lead designer for Siege of Dragonspear, Philip Daigle, and they're like, hey, would you be interested in checking out a new Baldur's Gate, like an original Baldur's Gate adventure that no one's seen before? And I'm like, hey, hell yes, I would.
Yeah, you think?
Oh yeah, I was like, hell yeah. So I sat down with the build. I played through the storyline and the characters, and I got into it pretty heavily. And then I sent them about 20 pages of like feedback, and I'm like, man, I love this. Oh my god, this is a great point. And I was a little surprised by a number of things in a good way. What you mentioned about sort of like being like an interim adventure between the first game and the second game, I was kind of wondering how they would deal with that, because I didn't feel like that would be especially freeing in some respects. But depending on how they actually did it, that's what kind of surprised me in a good way. Like what they did is they sort of make sure they pay respect to what happened at the end of Baldur's Gate 1, which, from a narrative design standpoint, they could have taken the easy way out and just said, hey, we're just going to say a few paragraphs about, hey, Baldur's Gate 1 is over, and now we're going to go on somewhere else. And they don't. Like, they have an entire prologue and opening chapter sequence where you actually get to deal with the remnants of what happened with Sarabak, who's your antagonist at Baldur's Gate 1, and you get to wrap that up. And then even better, you get to see the repercussions of that in the city that you helped save, which again was a brave narrative choice. And again, you can easily explain that away in one or two sentences. But what I thought was cool is because Baldur's Gate 2 actually starts with a similar few sentences saying, you had to leave Baldur's Gate under, dark and mysterious circumstances. That game proceeds to answer all those questions, and then they add even more to it. Like they make sure they're paying respects to your history of the character. You get to meet a lot of your old friends from the first game, and then see how they transition from BG1 to BG2. Because some of them change classes, and you get to see the decision points they're making for that, and how they feel about that training and interact with them. So it fleshes out all that behind the scenes stuff, and then they did something which I'm kind of jealous about. They included this antagonist who's not a villain, but what she does, she's this crusade leader called the Shining Lady, and she's actually doing a better job of being a hero than you are, which was something I wasn't expecting, and it floored me because when it all starts coming out what she's doing, I felt guilty because I'm like, wow, you know what? I've been dealing with these politicians in Baldur's Gate, and they're kind of like a skeevy lot.
Sure.
I like being a hero of the city, and don't get me wrong, I like punching Sarabak in the face, but she's doing more, and and her people, that are with her in her crusade, they all have very, very valid reasons for backing her up, and I felt even worse about that. I'm like, wow, do my companions feel the same way about me that that these troops feel about her? Because I start getting jealous, and then I'm like, damn you, Beamdog writers, how dare you do this to me? But I thought it was a really great take on how to do an antagonist for a role-playing game. So I'd never seen it done quite that way before, and it worked really well, and that's. And that's just one of the things that I think they did really well in the title. I mean, I could go on and apply for hours, but I was pretty impressed from a narrative standpoint. They have one of the writers, Amber Scott. She's done Dungeons and Dragons work before, and then there's another writer, Andrew Foley, who they actually got from graphic novels and movies. And both of those guys, the girl and the guy, did a great job with the writing for the game. And then they surprised me with twists like that.
Nice.
And then they did another amazing thing, which is hard for, I think, any writer to do, but that's part of the profession, is when they actually inherited a character that had a tone established by another writer, they have the writing chops to break down that character, match the tone, and make sure you felt like it was exactly your old friend that you'd already encountered. Because a lot of the characters from Baldur's Gate 1 that show up in Siege of Dragonspear, they feel exactly like the Baldur's Gate 1 take. And, and that's a very hard thing for a writer to do.
So if I can ask, and you may not be able to answer at this point, with the specific character you just referenced, was that Minsk?
Yes, actually. But he was just one of them, because in some respects, Minsk is actually a little bit easier than other characters, because he's got sort of like the one driving ego signature for his character.
Yeah.
It's the more subtle characters that come after that, which I think are a little harder to capture. But even Minsk is not something that just any writer can tackle and still do him justice. But I think all the writers in Beamdog did a great job of making sure they all felt like the same characters you journeyed with, in addition to the new characters, which were also pretty cool.
Cool. All right. Well, I was actually talking with Chris Perkins was on 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he mentioned that Minsk was one of the few characters that is kind of breaking. You know, he's in the comic books, he's in the games, he's kind of becoming a breakout character in general. But okay, so just for time purposes, I want to try to kind of move it over into some questions that people have posted. But I did want to mention, Moltra from Reddit had said, in the prequel Baldur's Gate, Siege of Dragonspear, are there some story references from BG2? So obviously there's some from BG1, but will there be any from BG2, Baldur's Gate 2?
Yeah, the interquel bridges both games, and it does it almost seamlessly and answers all your questions, and it also makes for some really good emotional points as to why you may have left, and they also did a really good job with that. So the answer is yes. Okay,
great. All right, so speaking of time being a predator, I want to, unfortunately we don't have time to go into this in detail, but just wanted to mention that Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2, which I believe you didn't just write, but you were a design lead on that game. Is that not correct?
I was, yeah.
Okay, that has actually just gotten new life on Steam for PC, Mac, and Linux, and there are mods for it, including the quote-unquote restored content mod that are already available. So, boy, I wish I could go into that, but there's people have asked some questions I want to try to get to, but people, go check that out. I've played through Knights of the Republic 2 twice. I played it once when it first came out.
Shame. Kudos to you.
Yeah, and I played it again with a restored content mod. So, and Kreia, of course. I mean, there's some great characters in there, but Kreia is one of the most well-written, characters in a game out there, in my opinion. Although I did start, I'm not going to give anything away if people haven't played it. I think about 3/4 of the way through, I was starting to go, okay, I think I know what's going on here, and then that did turn out to be the case. So, because she starts I don't know, I'll just be quiet. So, okay, so we'll try to hit a few questions, and then I know you've got something else to get to. So we'll try to get you moving. So, and I want to bring this one up, if you can, and boy, I know it's hard to do this. If you could try to hit this in about 30 seconds or a minute, so maybe we can get to another question. Several people asked something along these lines, and this was Shammy Sham from Reddit. He said, you mentioned in various interviews that you wanted to stretch your creative muscle with different ways to deliver dialogue outside of talking heads, quote unquote. What kind of methods would you like to play around with?
Well, Shammy Sham was an awesome name. So to explain, talking head conversations are kind of like what you'd see in Star Wars games, where two people face each other and you have like menu dialogue options. I see a lot of dialogue mechanics that are like that, and I guess my issue with it is that I don't really see those advancing very much, except possibly in a cinematic direction, which takes a lot of resources and time. What I'd like to see is either new variations on that system or new ways for you to communicate with NPCs in the environment. And things that I'd probably say as examples was, hey, well, what if there was a telepathy system where maybe you can't communicate with someone with words and you have to use hand signals? Like maybe like you could only transmit images between people to try and communicate what, your dialogue is. And I was also reading this other book, Forging Divinity by Andrew Rowe. He's a designer at Obsidian. And while I was reading it, he had so many descriptions for how people talked that I would almost love to do a dialogue system that's based on gestures, tones, and how you sort of alter your face during a conversation and turn that into dialogue combat. Because I think people forget how much of a part of a conversation and getting your point across can be done with that. But that's some of the stuff I'd probably want to explore.
Okay, well, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, there's still so much ground to explore in games. You know, we feel like, oh, it's all, no, it has definitely not all been done.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say Neasano, I believe I'm saying that right, from RPG Codex asks, is there a game from another developer you wish you would have been involved with?
Wow, that's a good question. Let's see. I think, and this might cause a rebellion, but I really wish I'd been involved with Fallout 3. It would have been great to be involved with Fallout 4. I really enjoyed working on Fallout New Vegas. Some other ones that might be kind of weird. I really thought Alan Wake was great. I would really love to have been involved with that. The Amnesia games I thought were awesome. I just love the mechanics, and then weaving a story around that or just helping out the mechanics I thought would be cool. Shadowrun was great. But to be honest, like just about every other game that I've wanted to work on, whether it's FTL or the next Wasteland or the next, successor to Torment, like I've actually had a chance to work on those. But that's a few titles that I wish I'd been involved with.
So, you mentioned Shadowrun, Dragonspear, I think is how you say the name, from Reddit, said, has Harebrained Schemes approached you about writing for their Shadowrun games, and would you consider it?
No, they haven't, but man, I would work for them in a second. I love the Shadowrun universe. It's one of my favorite cyberpunk universes, and it's got a lot of legs. And the few times that I've met Jordan Wiseman, he is just a nice, soft-spoken guy, and he just seems like a great person to work with. And I think they've done a lot of great stuff with the Shadowrun video games, and I think they obviously had a great setting to base that stuff on. But even more so, I was enjoying playing the games themselves. And I think they're doing cool stuff. I'd love to work with them.
Cool. Yeah, the Shadowrun Returns games are great. I'm also impressed how they're able to deliver that experience on PC and tablet. Very, very impressed. Definitely check
tablet
those out.
Stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and it plays. I mean, I've played it on PC. I've seen a friend play it on tablet. I was like, it looks like the same game. So, okay, couple of the kind of fanboy questions, or fangirl, to be fair all around. Neanderthal from RPG Codex asked, is Anna one of Ravel's daughters from Planescape Torment?
Oh, wow. I do not. No, she is not.
Okay, she is not.
She is not. That was not the intention with her, mostly because Anna has demonic origins, and I sort of saw Ravel as being more just night haggy.
Okay.
She is not. I will answer that definitely.
Definitely not. Okay, and Neanderthal also asked, if Beamdog starts working on an enhanced edition of Torment, will you get a heads up and a role in designing it?
Oh, wow. Well, if they do, I'm going to be calling Trent several times. And going,
constantly now.
just so you guys know, there's a number of scripting stuff I would love to fix in there, and I would also like to let you guys know of all the quests that were cut from that game, because I can give you a rundown on where certain files are, how you can resurrect those elements, and where you can put those hooks. But yeah, no, that would be a lot of fun, and if I could share that information with them, I'd be happy to. I'm sure Trent would be up for it.
Okay. All right. So a couple of questions, and then we got to wrap. I know you have to go. Appreciate your time so much. Riv Musique is asking from KOTOR 2, who was Mira's true father meant to be?
Oh, you know what? There's two lineage questions I don't answer about that game, and one is Mira, and the other one is an Aaron K question concerning Kreia. So I can't answer that question.
Okay, fair enough. All right, a couple more quick questions from Ludo Lens on the RPG Codex. Do you have any narrative cliche which you would consider a guilty pleasure?
Ooh, that's tough. Well, not really tough. Actually, Amnesia was probably the worst one. I think I got that out of my system with Planescape Torment.
And KOTOR. KOTOR 2, right?
Well, KOTOR was a little bit different because we actually had one reviewer write in and go, man, I'm sick of amnesia. And then I was like, well, you do realize it's not amnesia. It's actually just a player character not disclosing everything.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, important distinction.
Crazier. And I'm like, well, I don't know if that's any more fair technically, but what I always saw the player character encoder doing is he or she is just someone that plays it close to the chest. And I thought it'd be more interesting for players to go, what the hell's going on with my player character?
Right.
I thought that'd be a more interesting take. But
that is
interpreted amnesia.
Yeah, that is a very important distinction now that I think about it. Okay, a couple more real quick, Chris, and I'm going to let you go. And I thank you so much for being on. And, we'll have you back on to talk Numenera. I got no problem with that whatsoever. But, all right, I wanted to address Immortal from RPG Codex. Said, be the interviewer that Chris needs, not the interviewer he wants. There were some pretty hard hitting questions on RPG Codex, and Shane Plays Radio is not 2020 investigative journalism. I'm here to have a conversation with you. So, but you did say that you would visit the forums and try to address stuff that didn't get answered on the show.
Especially if they took the time to list those.
Right.
I'd like to.
So, and here's the last question from Crazed Weevil. Chris, you ready for this one?
Crazed Weevil. All right.
All right. The question is, can I play with madness?
Yes.
It's almost like if you were the size of a fox, would you still make video games? What was that one question?
Yeah, well, I think Amnesia proved that you could play with madness, and I think it's a really cool game mechanic. If depending on what psychological disorders you have, you can actually use it to your advantage. Because one thing I always thought if we ever did a telepathy-based game is if you actually have a psychological disorder, that might actually be an excellent defense against mind control or, getting commands from somebody else, because your brain would literally scramble them after a while and you could act freely again. But at the same time, it would reinforce your paranoia that someone actually is out there trying to control you. All
right, great. Chris Avellone, thank you so much for being on. Looking forward to Sage of Dragonspear, the Baldur's Gate interquel. And I'd love to talk to you again in the future. Have fun with your next interview, and just have a great day, man. Thanks so much for being on. Go ahead.
Shane, thank you very much for having me. And I would love to talk about Numenera, and just let me know. And again, I'll get to those other questions in the forums, but thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to cut to a break. When we come back, we'll wrap up the show and get on out of here on this fine Saturday.
Comic book lovers, Michael Tierney's local comic book stores meet all of your comic book needs with friendly service. Visit the comic book store on Treasure Hill Road in Little Rock or Collector's Edition on JFK Boulevard in North Little Rock. And don't forget to click on over to the wildstars.com website. I personally have been a customer of Michael's since the mid-'80s, and I trust him for my reserve list still today. Michael knows comics. In addition to being in business for 34 years, he has written multiple columns for comic magazines, is an Overstreet price guide advisor, and publishes his own comic book series, The Wild Stars. Trust me, these stores are run by a comic book lover for comic book lovers. Remember, for all of your comic book needs with friendly service and to get your copies of The Wild Stars, make sure to visit the comic book store on Treasure Hill Road in Little Rock or Collector's Edition on JFK Boulevard in North Little Rock, and visit thewildstars.com to learn more. Did you know that your business can provide its employees with the same benefits packages as even the largest Fortune 500 companies, often at no direct cost to you, the business owner, and while saving money at the same time? If you've always thought that you would like to offer those big company benefits to your employees but thought that there was no way, let our team at the Macomb Teague Agency come by and show you how it can be possible and how simple it is to put into place. We offer major medical and group and individual plans, on-or-off exchange, dental and vision, life products, cancer, accident, and more. These benefits create that ever-so-priceless commodity known as loyalty, and yes, we are ACA certified. We even offer these same benefits on the individual basis if you're just a one-person entrepreneur or making things happen on your own. Give us a call today at 501-838-6827 to schedule your no-obligation on-site consultation. The Macomb Teague Agency is serving all of Arkansas and surrounding states. 501-838-6827. Give us 1% of your trust, and we'll earn the other 99.
All right. Welcome back. Welcome back to Shane Plays Radio. Just had Chris Avellone well-known game developer, for the majority of the show. We've got a couple of minutes here to wrap up. I'm going to kind of let you know what's coming next week. Next week, I'm going to have a review of the new DC Comics universe animated movie, Justice League Gods and Monsters, which is a pretty different take on Justice League. I'm really looking forward to it. Bruce Timm is back in the mix, and looking forward to it. I'm going to have Joe and Hannah Williams of Well Not Studios. They're going to be talking about their RPG Serpent in the Staglands, which is kind of a hardcore throwback computer RPG to the 90s. It doesn't hold your hand. It's very beautiful to look at, very atmospheric, and I've heard it described as a mix between Darklands and Baldur's Gate. And then I've also got a Let's Play series of Serpent in the Staglands going on right now on YouTube. So you can go to YouTube, search for Shane Plays, put Shane-Plays. There's also links on shaneplays.com. If you go there, I post every time there's a new episode of that. So super quick, we'll try to get a little bit of news in here. Can we get the news writers going there? Kendall? There we go. All right, Moe, those guys work hard. They're up here on a Saturday. They're not even complaining. So first, a happy 48th birthday to Vin Diesel. And he got a Dungeons & Dragons birthday cake, which is super cool. If you go to shaneplays.com, there's a link to the story about it, and then there's also a picture of it right there in the show notes. It's the Amiga's, the Commodore Amiga's 30th anniversary. I also have a post on shaneplays.com with a photo gallery. It talks about the Amiga 1000. That was an incredibly influential computer from the 80s. Apple gets all the talk and the credit, but Commodore did so much. There's also an ancient Commodore Amiga that's been running the heat and AC for 19 public schools for 30 years. That's pretty impressive. And that story is up on shaneplays.com. And I believe it was an Amiga. It was either a 500 or a 2000. It wasn't a 1000 that's been running the heat and AC, but very, very cool. And if you remember, we had Brian Bagnall on a few weeks back, who was doing a Kickstarter to write a book about the Amiga, and that was successfully funded. So I'm waiting to get my eager little hands on that. And last, from San Diego Comic-Con, there's a trailer that came out for an animated Vixen series from DC Comics, and Kendall, check this out. It's set in the same world as the Flash and Arrow TV shows. All right, so Kendall's nodding his head. The voice actors are the same. So the actors for Arrow and Flash are the guys that play them in the TV show. Cisco's in it and stuff like that. Next week, like I said, we're going to have Joe and Hannah Williams, Well Not Studios, talking Serpent in the Staglands, and I'll review Justice League Gods and Monsters. Thanks for listening in. Have a great day. Shane Plays Radio. It's a great time to be a geek.